Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari, and he is the editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie, Michael Rosenthal. I'm sure you guys at home have cabin fever like we do, so we're going to keep our minds occupied with plenty of boxing talk on today's show. We're going to be taking a look back at Mayweather-Pacquiao 5 years later. The debate rages on, as so many of us saw on social media this past week. Plus, former unified 154-pound champion Julian J-Rock Williams will be joining us. So will undefeated IBF World Super Middleweight champion Caleb Sweethands Plant. And naturally, we'll get into all the hot takes and recent news in boxing. But first, Mike, happy Cinco de Mayo. I think that's the right salutation. Is that what people say?
That is the first time anybody's ever said that to me, but I appreciate it.
Right. So I have a question.
It's usually a big week. I'm usually around all the boxing people this, Cinco de Mayo weekend, but not this time.
Right, exactly. I mean, like the day itself, I think Cinco de Mayo is like the holiday version of French fries. I mean, where, don't let the name fool you. It's probably more American than it is Mexican, but it's such a huge part of boxing. I mean, it's weird to see a weekend go by without the live action. I know here at PBC, the fighters have been steadily engaging with fans through our Premier Boxing Champion social media platforms, from Facebook to Instagram to YouTube and Twitter. I mean, we've had something new every day almost, but naturally, when I think of Cinco de Mayo, I think of all the great fights that occurred, not necessarily great fights, but big fights that occurred during the early part of May.
Yeah, it became a great tradition for boxing. Boxing and the Kentucky Derby were always on Cinco de Mayo weekend. We were talking about this off the podcast, and we realized that it was Oscar De La Hoya who started it when he fought Ricardo Mayorga. At least I think I got that right. Somebody let us know if I don't. He fought Mayorga, Floyd Mayweather, and then Steve Forbes on Cinco de Mayo weekend for 3 years in a row. Then Mayweather took over by fighting Mosley, Cotto, Guerrero, Maidana, and Pacquiao on Cinco de Mayo weekend. And then it was Canelo Alvarez's turn. He fought Khan, Chavez. Then he had a year off because the PEDs and the beef, whatever. That's a different conversation. But he was suspended, and then he came back and fought Daniel Jacobs last year on Cinco de Mayo. So it's been a great tradition. It's just another element to bemoan, in the break of the action because of this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that we've been, as fight fans, I guess we've been keeping ourselves occupied by talking about every little bit of boxing news that we can get. Last week on the podcast, we had Jermell Charlo on, and Mike, I think it's safe to say that he gave the fans plenty to talk about.
The dude's got energy, that's for sure. We were talking about him maybe fighting Jason Rosario, which I think would be a fantastic fight. I wish more fighters would jump on the hot fights. Jermell is hot as hell after avenging his loss to Tony Harrison. Rosario is hot as hell after upsetting Julian Williams. Hot. That would be a really compelling fight.
Yeah, I love that fight. I mean, it's a unification, fireworks guaranteed because both of those guys are bombs away. And, I guess it boils down to whether or not it's really feasible. I'm sure Julian Williams is going to have a little something to say about that when we talk to him a little later on the show. But I also thought that him mentioning a trilogy versus Jarrett Hurd was interesting. I could be wrong, but I get the impression he sees Hurd as his toughest test, but a trilogy, does that mean he expects to lose one of the fights, or he thinks it's just going to be, three magnificent wars? I don't know, but was surprised to hear him give that kind of praise to Jarrett Hurd.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that exactly either. I actually like that fight because Hurd is still a big, strong dude, and it would just be a fun fight to watch. I don't know if I see him at quite the same level as Rosario at this point, but it would be a really fun fight to watch.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, also today, Erickson Lubin was on PBC's IG Live. You can find it on YouTube now. And I don't know if you saw this, Mike, but he called out Tony Harrison. Says that's a fight that he wants. And I was thinking to myself, man, that there's so many great fights at 154 pounds that can be made. If you threw the names all in a hat and just picked out two, you're almost guaranteed to get a great fight.
Yeah, it's a good division. I'm just thinking after hearing you say that, I think Tony Harrison's probably one of the last guys I'd want to call out.
Yeah.
Look what he did to Jermell in the first fight. He's just the kind of guy that's going to make you look bad. Jermell was just really on for that second fight. That was really a strong performance.
It was.
Yeah, Tony Harrison, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough fight. I like what Lubin said, which was the winner earns the right to a rematch against Jermell Charlo.
Okay.
So I wouldn't mind seeing it. Now, in other news, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua began negotiating for a fight. No, wait, they didn't. No, wait, they can't. No, wait. How did this become news again, Mike?
This might be number one is just boxing. People just talk and talk and talk, but maybe this is a product of this hiatus that we're on. It's just people are talking more than usual. I think the powers that be, the promoters, realize that they can't go directly into that fight. I mean, I suppose if they came up with just a ridiculous amount of money to pay Wilder to step aside, against Fury and Kubrat Pulev to step aside, against Joshua, then I suppose they could make it happen. But I don't see them raising that kind of money. And it sounds like Wilder and Pulev's been really strong about this. He really wants this fight. Although he did hint that he would be open to talking about it. But I think we're talking about a lot of money that's not there.
Right, and I don't think Wilder's open to it at all. I think he's of the opinion that, yeah, right, if I lose this opportunity, you guys are going to shut me out. I may not get another chance at that belt for
that's
an
important time. Yeah, it's an important element of this.
Yes, I think nothing to see here as far as that, barring something crazy. Given how the year has gone, though, that isn't entirely impossible. But barring something crazy, I expect to see a third fight between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury before anything else. Now, there was also some news that kind of saddened me. I guess there's hope for optimism. I don't know, Mike, but I learned that Ryan Garcia will not be able to proceed with his scheduled second-round KO over Jorge Linares, or at least that's what Mike Coppinger reported one day after Oscar De La Hoya said that the fight would actually occur on July 4th. Now, Linares, according to Coppinger, is said to be out of the country, so Garcia may have to find another opponent. I hope not, because obviously if that were to happen, I'd be greatly disappointed. I fully expected Garcia to put the beats on Linares, like he said something about his mama, and I hope I don't have to wait too long to see that.
Yeah, I don't know what the facts are. It makes sense that if he's out of the country, it would be hard for him to get into the country for the fight, but we don't know really know what the situation is, and we don't know how things are going to play out. I think in some circles, some people close to Garcia, I think, really want that fight. But let me quote Eddie Garcia. We alluded to this on a previous conversation.
Eddie Garcia.
Eddie, I combined two trainers. Eddie Reynoso. We had spoken about this before the podcast. I believe he was interviewed on January 6th. He said, quote, "I think Ryan needs one or two fights before he faces Linares, and we hope that fight happens either in May or September. But he's in line. It would be a very good test for Ryan." So I think I'm not sure that Eddie Reynoso agrees with you 100%. I'm going to go out on a limb. If that fight happens, I'm picking Linares to upset. I have problems even calling it an upset, but I'll pick Linares to upset Ryan Garcia. I think this Ryan Garcia thing is like out of control. He's proven nothing. He's proven that he's a good prospect. That's what he's proven. Linares, I don't know if he's slipped. Maybe he has slipped. I'll be honest and say sometimes it's hard for me to tell going into a fight whether an older fighter has slipped or not. And I suppose he has. He's been in a lot of wars. But what I've seen in the last couple of fights is still a really good fighter. He's a really good boxer. He's got a ton of experience, like a million times more than Garcia. I think at the very least, it's a tough fight for Garcia.
Well, to be honest with you, I can't tell if he's slipped either, and that's because he's been getting knocked out pretty much in every part of his career. So it's hard to say, whether his latest knockout, I think it was last year against, Cesar Cano, was due to any slippage or not. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, as far as Ryan Garcia and the hype. I just think there's been a lot of hype associated with Jorge Linares as well. I really don't believe that's Ryan Garcia's big test. Now, it was January when Reynoso made that comment. I think Garcia had one fight since then. He did say one or two fights. So
actually, I should have researched that. So he did have a fight after he.
I believe he had a fight in February, like somewhere around I believe he had a fight on Valentine's Day.
Well, the point of what I said is that there were some reservations that Reynoso had that this guy's not a pushover.
Yeah, he just wants more time to prepare Ryan Garcia, who's still a pup in his career. But I think he's got what's needed to get Linares out of there. I love the fact that you're going on the record and picking Linares, because we got to make some kind of bet. The next time I'm in LA or something, there's so many great restaurants out there, Mike. So pick one, please, so you can take me out whenever.
It's an Irish restaurant that I like. It's called McDonald's. That's how much I believe in Linares. That's how much I believe in Linares.
Look, I mean, he's been stopped, I think, 4 times really, but usually early, and I expect Garcia to bomb on him early. Why not? He just gave
Lomachenko a really hard time 2 years ago.
But I feel like it was a style thing, and also that was like Lomachenko's first fight at 35,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. I was just going to acknowledge that he was moving up in weight. So basically, he was moving up in weight to fight what I consider a very good fighter. So that's a tough proposition for Lomachenko. But for anybody to give Lomachenko problems, I think gives you an idea of the skill level of this guy. Has. He's 34 years old. He's not as good as he was. I'm pretty confident in saying that, but I think he's still pretty good.
I think Lomachenko's a good style matchup for him, and I don't want to say good style matchup for him, because Lomachenko's not a good style matchup for anybody. But I think Lomachenko is better suited for his style, the way he fights, his straight shots and so forth. I think Garcia, with his long arms, his quickness, his power, he's going to be a handful, especially early on. I think actually that Linares is the perfect opponent for Garcia, and the delay, to me, hurts Linares' chances. Garcia's younger. He stays in the gym. He can only improve as far as I'm concerned. But whatever. We will wait and see. Now. Oh, yeah, I can't wait. Hopefully that's one of the fights we see when, once boxing resumes. Now, speaking of fights we see, Mikey Garcia was last week's guest on Timeout with Ray Flores. That's every Monday afternoon live on the PBC Instagram page. And Mikey was calling out all the welters. Obviously, he wants Manny Pacquiao the most, like nearly every other welterweight for obvious reasons. But he said he was ready to scrap with any other 147-pounder. He said it with conviction, the way he was calling these guys out, which got me thinking, in your opinion, other than Pacquiao, which welter would you want to see Mikey Garcia face?
I think the best matchup for him is the other Garcia, Danny. I think Porter, I applaud Mikey Garcia. Obviously he proved what kind of guts he has by fighting Spence. Obviously he'll fight anybody. I just think Porter's maybe a little too physical for a small welterweight like that. I think Ugas might be a good fight, but I'm not sure that Garcia would perceive that to be a big enough event. I'm not sure. I just think that that's a terrific matchup. And it's a really tough fight for both guys. It's like a 50-50 fight. And Mikey probably is a little bit better boxer, but I don't think by very much. Not as much as some people might think. I think it's a great matchup.
I do too, and I think that's a logical choice. By the way, I love, your Dennis Ugas against any top welterweight.
Yeah, I do too.
Is really good. One thing, by the way, that Mikey said on IG that really caught my attention was talking about the Spence fight, and he said, it was his night. Basically, he did everything right, and I didn't, and he fought a great fight. And he said, look, Juan Manuel Marquez was shut out by Floyd Mayweather, and he went on to do great things. I thought that was, kind of a nice way to put it in perspective for him. But now, as far as who I would choose, it wouldn't be Danny Garcia. I understand why. I think he is a logical choice, but I want to see Mikey Garcia fight Keith Thurman. It's sink or swim time for both guys, if you ask me. Mikey's got a good chin, and he has some pretty darn good pop, so I think he'd be pretty competitive against someone like Thurman, and I want to see what Thurman has left. So, it's a really has left. Excuse me. So it's a really intriguing fight in terms of styles. I'll take it if it happens. I'll take Garcia against anyone. Really, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, before Mikey lost to, and I don't want to put too much emphasis on this, but before he lost to Spence, he was one of my very favorite fighters to watch. When you get beat that badly, it sort of takes a little bit of the wind out of your sails, kind of thing. But I think he bounced back pretty strong against Jesse Vargas, and I think that he still has a bright future. And I'll always applaud him for taking that fight. I didn't think it was a good idea, but I applaud him for doing it.
Right, and I love the fact that he's staying at 47 and still trying to get those big names in those tough fights. He's had quite a run, actually, since he's been back from. This guy beat Sergey Lipinets. He beat Robert Easter, Adrian Broner, Dejan Zlatan, Jesse Vargas. He's a
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's had quite a run. All right, enough of the hot takes. It is time to get on with our show, and we're going to start by introducing our first guest. He is the former unified 154-pound champion, Julian J-Rock Williams. So, Julian, for starters, how are you and your family doing at this time?
Everybody's good, man. Everybody's good. Just, social distancing and staying in the house and, just spending quality time with my family.
Yeah, it's always a good thing. Have you been able to work out at all while you're practicing social distancing?
Yeah, I have been, which is a good thing. So I take work out as much as I possibly can, being as though I'm not able to get inside of a gym. So I just do a lot of stuff at home, do a lot of running and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw you on IG Live talking about a haircut. I've been wearing a hat and a hoodie to most of my Zoom meetings. So I got to ask you, have you had a chance to see your barber yet?
Nah, man. I'm probably going. Look, you know what's funny? When the barbershops closed down, I needed a haircut anyway. I normally get a haircut every 2 weeks, so I haven't seen my barber in like a month and a half. Man, it's crazy.
Is it gonna be a new look for you when you come back, or are you gonna see that barber?
I might as well just grow dreads, man. Where I'm at now, I might as well just braids or something.
Julian, you recently had surgery on your eye. Could you tell us exactly what that was for, and how is recovery going?
It's going pretty good. So basically, over the course of my pro career, I've been cut, over top of my eyes a few times, and scar tissue starts to build, and my skin was directly on the bone. It was really thin, and I probably should have got it done before my last fight. I had about 9 months off, but it's something that I put off because I'm not like one that, I don't like getting surgery, especially on my face, you know what I mean? So I kind of like put it off, and it came back to, bite me in the butt. So I just said, I'm going to take this time and go get the surgery and, heal up and, hopefully come back stronger.
Do you know when you...
The same problem keep happening.
Sounds good. So it makes sense. Do you know when you'll be able to spar again?
You know what? I don't. They told me 6 months to fight.
Ooh.
But I think, I know, right? It was just crazy. You know what? I talked to a fighter who got the same surgery from the same exact doctor, and he was like, man, I started sparring again in like 4 months, and then I fought in the 6th month. He said, but and everything went well. You know what I mean? This is a pretty known fighter who gets cut a lot. I don't want to put his business out there. It's his personal health business, but he gets cut a lot in fights, and we all seen him fight plenty of times. He bleeds crazy. So I'm guessing maybe 4 or 5 months I can spar. You gotta understand, I gotta go with the whole training camp before I can fight. I can't just say, it's 6 months up and I'm gonna fight. I have to actually go through a training camp. So
of course, yeah.
I'm thinking maybe 4 months.
Okay, that's not too bad. That might coincide with the end of all this, so I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's talk about the last time we saw you in the ring, which was in January. You lost your titles to Jason Rosario. You've had some time to further reflect on that fight. What are your thoughts?
I just thought I had a bad night, you know what I mean? Not taking nothing away from Jason Rosario. He fought a good fight, but I know I'm a lot better, I thought I had a bad night. I thought some unfortunate things happened. But, I got to live with it, you know what I mean? Now I plan on bouncing back even stronger.
Now, you just mentioned some unfortunate things happening. Is there anything that you can share with us, or are you trying to keep that close to?
I'd rather not, touch on it, you know what I mean? The eye, for one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it opened up really early, you know what I mean? So I think that, and just it's a lot that goes into a training camp, you know what I mean? So I think it's just something I can learn from, you know what I mean? I can learn from any situation, good or bad, that happens in my life. I try to take as much from it as I possibly can, and that's what I'm doing with this. I'm just gonna move forward and go get my titles back when the time is right.
Now, is there anything you would do differently for that fight in terms of preparation, or even in the ring? Was there anything in the ring that happened that you would do differently?
Yeah, but I don't want to necessarily touch and say, you know, because I want to fight him again. We probably will end up fighting again. So
sure.
I don't want to, say what I would do differently.
That sort of leads into the next question. What are after having fought Rosario, what are your impressions of him as a fighter?
He's a good fighter, man. He's a good fighter. I don't take nothing away from him. I give him 100% credit, and I don't make no excuses. He fought a really good fight. He should be proud of himself. He's a good fighter.
I like that. You chose not to exercise the rematch clause, at least not immediately. Was it because of the eye injury? Is that the reason you didn't fight him again immediately?
Yeah, because I didn't want to go in a fight with the same same underlying problems. You know what I mean? That would have been a little bit stupid of me.
Yeah.
If I don't take time to correct my mistakes and go back into a fight where the same thing could possibly happen again. So, you know what I mean? Just because I got a surgery doesn't mean I don't want to never get cut again. That just means that I got the scar tissue cleaned up, and it made it better than what it was. You know what I mean? So I want to go into a fight 100% healthy, to give myself the best chance of winning.
Again, makes sense. Your longtime trainer, Stephen Breadman Edwards, said he has to fight that kid again. He's got to knock the kid out, and if he doesn't, I'm going to be disappointed in him. Would you agree with that assessment?
I mean, I want to win, man. You know what I mean? If we fight him again, when I fight him again, I just want to win. I don't care if I knock him out or not.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We also recently spoke to Jermell Charlo, and he's talking about he wants Jason Rosario next. How do you see that fight playing out if you may have to fight the winner if that does happen first? How do you think Charlo and Rosario match up?
I think it's a good fight. It's 50-50 fight. You know what I mean? Charlo's not unbeatable, and neither is Rosario. It's a good fight to make.
So you think it's 50-50? It's that close a fight?
I think it's close. It depends on who shows up that night. You know what I mean? Who has the better game plan? It depends on a lot of different things. But I think it's a 50-50 fight. Rosario's not upside down.
Yeah. Now, if you don't get either one of them in the ring next, is there anyone that you would like to face after that?
No. I want anybody with a world title. I want my titles back.
Have you heard anything as far as when who your next opponent might be, or when your next fight might be?
Man, everything's on hold right now.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure everybody was supposed to fight in April and May. You know, they're gonna have first rights to the new dates because their dates got pushed back. So I don't even know the next time I'm fighting. I mean, the whole world is on lockdown, so I can't be but so selfish and calling bugging people about a date when everybody's career stopped. So I just gotta be patient and wait my turn.
I wanted to ask you something that crossed my mind. In consecutive fights, you experienced a really high and a really low. How do you process that? Or you just say, hey, that's just boxing and you got to move on?
It's not just boxing; it's just life.
Right. Very good. Yeah.
That's how life play out. You know what I mean? Sometimes you up, sometimes you down. I don't I ain't about to be too hang my head too much. You know what I mean? Because that's I heard some fighters say they fall into depression and stuff like that after a loss. That don't fix anything. You know what I mean? What's fixing it is bettering myself, doing things like getting surgery in my eye, and controlling the things that I can control outside the boxing ring. You know what I mean?
I don't want to throw too many potential opponents at you, but another one that Kenneth and I were talking about is Tony Harrison. Do you like that fight, and how do you think that fight would play out?
I think it's a good fight to make. I think Tony's a good fighter, but I mean, do I like the fight? I mean, what's it for right now? You know what I mean? I want to fight for world titles. I don't want to fight, you know what I mean, for nothing, so you gotta have some purpose behind it.
Got it.
Yeah, completely understand. So obviously your focus right now is it sounds like getting Rosario back in the ring basically as soon as that fight's available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Now there's other guys who are trying to get you in the ring as soon as possible too. I know Jarrett Hurd's mentioned you of a few times. Would you consider a rematch with Hurd at some point, perhaps when one of you gets a belt, or?
Yeah, when one of us get a belt, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
He feel the same way about me as I do as about Rosario, and I can respect that. So I ain't, you know what I mean? It's a good fight. We had that small piece of history, and it was an exciting night. I was fortunate enough to come out on top, and he wanted to get that back, and I respect that. So.
Moving away from boxing for a second, we saw on PBC Countdown on Fox that you're heavy into real estate in Philadelphia. How has that been going?
Yeah, it's been going really good, man. A little bit slow now because everything's shut down. The city stopped, put a pause on all construction. But it's been pretty good for me, man. I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed.
Is that something that you want to dive into even further when all is said and done?
Absolutely. You know, I think it's the quickest way for me to build generational wealth. You know what I mean? 90% of the millionaires in America, you know, became millionaires through real estate.
Oh,
very good.
That's a big number. Number.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Wow.
Well,
I just got an idea.
Well, I wanted to tie everything together with one last question. You sort of alluded to it. I was going to ask, what do you want? Your immediate goals, and I guess the immediate goal is to get a new belt wrapped around your waist. But is there something beyond that you want to accomplish?
I want to work on the short-term goals first. The short-term goals is not just to get any belt back, but to get my belts back.
Got it.
So, and yeah, my long-term goal is to be a 2-division champion. I want to go up to 160 soon and win the title there as well.
Do you know how many fights we're looking at before you make that move?
Before I lost, it was going to be about 3.
Mm.
But I don't know, and I got to see how things play out.
Very good. Julian, thanks so much for your time. We want to wish you and your family health and safety in these crazy times. We look forward to having you back real soon.
Yep, thank you guys for having me. I wish you guys the same thing, man. Stay safe.
Thank you, Julian. Take care.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, we're back, and it's time for the segment of the PBC podcast we call Toe to Toe. Now, every week, Mike and I will go back and forth on a topic or two, and in the spirit of Cinco de Mayo, we're going to take a look at the most lucrative bout in boxing history that took place on May 2nd, 2015, between the two greats of this era, Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. Now, we all know what happened. Mayweather won a comfortable unanimous decision, which made him the WBA, WBC, and WBO World Welterweight Champion. And he was also the WBA and WBC World Super Welterweight Champion at that time, too, which it's insane when you think about it. Now, I'll tell you what else is insane. Total revenues for that fight, over $500 million, $72 million at the gate, over 4.4 million pay-per-view buys. Both are records, by the way. So certainly one of the biggest fights in history, Mike. But did it live up to the hype?
Yeah, you jest. No, it did not. It did not live up to the hype. I don't know anybody who thinks it did. I actually wrote a column on Boxing Junkie on this. 4 reasons why fans were disappointed. I'm not going to read my whole column to you, but there were a number of reasons I think why it failed in terms of a fight. Number one, it happened too late, in my opinion. Number two, Mayweather was just so good, and he had a defensive style the last part of his career. It just didn't create many great fights entertaining fights toward the end of his career, in my opinion. The Pacquiao claimed that his shoulder was injured after the fight, which still irks me. And then all the hype and the cost of the pay-per-view, sort of expectations were just through the roof. It's just it had to be an absolute classic for people not to be disappointed, and it was far from that.
Yeah, I hated that shoulder excuse, by the way, just because I feel like, you just shouldn't say something like that after the fight. And, I thought Mayweather's response to that was great. He was like, oh, he had a shoulder injury. Well, my hands were hurt. I had messed up biceps and so forth. That's the reality. You never go into a fight completely 100%. So to some, it kind of soiled the victory. To others, it was the reason for what happened. No matter how you view it, let's dig into it. What did you think of Pacquiao saying afterwards that he came into the fight, I believe, with an injury to his shoulder, and that sort of prevented him from being the best Manny Pacquiao that he could be that night?
Yeah, I remember a giant eye roll when he said that at the post-fight press conference. I'm not 100% convinced that Pacquiao entered the ring with a shoulder injury, at least not one that hindered his ability to fight to like a significant degree. I didn't see anything during the fight that made me think, wow, his shoulder doesn't look right. But for the purposes of our discussion here, I'll take his word for it. But to me, that raises an important question: should he have been open about the injury beforehand? Now, he and his team would say, "What are you, crazy? You can't let your opponent know that you have a weakness," which would have been the shoulder injury, which makes sense. But at the same time, the fans, some of whom filed lawsuits, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they had a right to say after the fact, wait a second, I plunked down $100 for the pay-per-view. I had a right to know if one of the guys was going into the fight not at 100%. And to me, that also makes sense. So it's sort of a complicated issue. I think in a perfect world, and boxing's not a perfect world, Pacquiao would have postponed the fight if he really had a shoulder injury that he thought would affect his performance. But in conclusion, the bottom line is that Pacquiao and company were never going to tip their hand or risk losing the monstrous payday. He made 9 figures by postponing the fight, even if they risked alienating fans.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that, as Mayweather said, no fighter goes into a fight 100%. Right. They all have all kinds of injuries, and it's typically convenient when one of those injuries is the reason why they lost. I remember Pacquiao saying that his shoulder, he first suffered that injury in 2008 or something like that. Well, that's a long time to go with an injury and be knocking cats out and becoming a Hall of Famer for it to affect you in one fight in 2015. So I don't know about that. And I thought it deserved that huge eye roll that you're talking about. I don't think that's the reason why he lost. He was throwing both hands pretty well from rounds 1 to round 12. They just weren't landing. I don't think the shoulder injury is the reason why he was missing. I mean, he was throwing the punches. It's just that Floyd Mayweather was making him miss. So that's certainly not it. I thought that, like I said, I thought that fight was better than what most people want to give it credit for. It was very competitive during the first half of the fight. Pacquiao obviously had a good 4th round where he landed that left hand that sort of caused Mayweather to stumble back. I thought he had a really good 6th round. He landed two big left hands, one at the beginning of the round and one toward the end of the round. That the first one certainly got Mayweather's attention, and I think the second one hurt Mayweather, but Mayweather dug deep. In fact, I feel that the end of the 6th round is sort of where the fight turned, because he landed a big left. If you guys go back and watch it, he landed a big left on Mayweather toward the end of the round, and he sort of had Mayweather cornered, and he threw some flurries, and Mayweather was shaking his head no, and then Mayweather backed him up with 2 big body shots in succession. He landed, right to the solar plexus, and I remember when that round ended, I saw Pacquiao take a big breath, and he never really threatened after that round. So I think Mayweather took some starch out of him and maybe discouraged Pacquiao from throwing more punches than he might have liked. Who knows? But a shoulder injury, I can't agree to that.
Yeah, and I could say this about any quote unquote reason or excuse. It just they're all the same. But this one was in such an enormous fight, and when he said that, I just remember thinking, "Oh no, come on, give us a break." Mayweather beat you fair and square. That's it. Move on.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, was it Hagler-Hearns? No. Yeah. But it was a good tactical bout, and more of what we saw of Mayweather in his later years, like you mentioned, where he just dismantled his opponent and cruised his way to a win. I think the fight got away from Pacquiao after round 6, and although he had his moments, I thought he never really fought with that sense of urgency that he needed. Miguel Cotto certainly did. Marcus Maidana did, and several others did against Mayweather, and made for much better fights. But Pacquiao stayed on the outside, and when he did throw in combinations, he landed very little, Mike.
That's an interesting concept. I think Pacquiao is not the passionate fighter in the sense that those other guys were. I think he's more like a machine. In his prime, he was in and out, these ridiculously quick feet, even more ridiculously quick hands. Landing these punches from crazy angles. That was Pacquiao. I guess there was passion there too, but I think of him more of as a machine. I think it was I think it was more Mayweather than it was Pacquiao in their fight. I think Mayweather was just so good at what he did in general, and at that point, just so unbelievably good defensively that there's just no way Pacquiao was going to beat him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. Certainly, there was a lot of backlash as far as what happened in that fight. For me, while it wasn't a great fight, I thought the media reaction was so over the top. I mean, they weren't this mad when Oscar De La Hoya fought Felix Trinidad and snuck in a bicycle into the ring the last 3 rounds. It was like he was on a trail in Central Park in Manhattan. But I get it. I mean, for a lot of the media, the wrong guy won. At least that's sort of how I looked at it, because I remember for years back in the day, like people telling me with a straight face that Floyd Mayweather was ducking or scared of Manny Pacquiao. And an idea so asinine that I couldn't wrap my head around it. So that went on for years. And then, it was, he'll lose if he ever dares step into the ring, and that didn't happen. So, of course, the narrative is going to change afterward. I mean, you just said it. Who the heck was expecting Floyd Mayweather to go toe-to-toe with Manny Pacquiao and give him the only chance he had? So I'm not surprised when, obviously, he outboxes Pacquiao or attempts to outbox Pacquiao. I thought the onus was on Pacquiao to do something different, but, that just didn't happen.
Yeah, he had to force the fight. Like Jose Luis Castillo Maidana had the way that you gave Mayweather problems. You just had to be like on him like flypaper. You just had to stay on top of him from beginning to end to have any sort of chance. A young Pacquiao would have had a better chance to do something like that, but not that version of Pacquiao. He wasn't as active as he was early in his career. Still really quick, but not as quick as he was. Maybe neither was Mayweather.
We'll touch on that in a second.
Yeah, no.
I guess my next question to you is, legacy-wise, what did the win do for Floyd?
Well, my gut, I wanted to say just for my gut that it really had no impact on his legacy of either fighter, actually, because it happened so late. To me, it was almost like the first word that comes to mind. It's almost like an exhibition. Maybe it was like, for me, it started to look like an old timers game a little bit. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but you get my point. But that said, I think that. Well, I'm kind of going back and forth in my mind right now. I think it does bolster Mayweather's legacy. I'm going to say that. Yeah. I'm going to say years from now, people will look back on his record and they'll see that he fairly easily outpointed the second best fighter of the era when both were still in their 30s. So I think that's something special. I think it definitely bolstered his legacy.
Yeah, I think it was a huge one. At worst, Pacquiao was number 3 pound for pound in most publications. I mean, was he the same Pacquiao from 2012? No. But I tell you what, it wasn't the same Mayweather from 2012 either. In fact, if you go back and watch the Mayweather who fought Miguel Cotto that year in 2012, you're going to telling yourself, like, the Floyd who fought Manny was a shadow of that fighter. And of course he was. I mean, he was 38 years old, 2 years older than Pacquiao, I believe. But anyway, when you have two guys that are in the top 3 pound for pound at the time, that are both legends, future Hall of Famers, squaring off in a fight of that magnitude, of course it was a huge win. One need look no further than what Pacquiao is doing today, if you ask me. I mean, he's still among the welterweight elites, and he's 41 years old right now?
Right. Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and look at his record again, which I've done a million times, and I have to look at it again. I think Pacquiao might have been a little bit too high on the pound for pound list at that point. Hadn't he already lost? He'd already lost before that, right?
He had won 3 in a row, including a win over decisive win over Timothy Bradley in the rematch. And Bradley was a pretty good fighter. No, it was. It's still, even, this, what that says? It just says how unbelievably great these two guys are. Even when they were in decline, they were still in the top 5 pound for pound. I think that says a lot about them, but it still wasn't. It should have happened in 2010. So do you believe that the outcome would have been any different if they fought 5 years earlier?
Okay, so that's an easy question for me. The answer is no.
Okay.
I think the outcome would have been the same, but, and this is a big but. As I mentioned earlier, I think it would have been a better fight, though. At least I think I mentioned that earlier. It would have been a better, more compelling fight.
Better in terms of what, action, or you think would have been closer, or
no, I'm not talking about
more compelling?
it might have been action. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in terms of competitiveness. Pacquiao would have been in and out, throwing those really quick punches from all those weird angles at a really high volume, a lot higher than he could throw when they actually did fight. I think that version of Pacquiao gives any fighter in history problems. I think he was that good. I think to say that he's an all-time great's not an overstatement.
No, absolutely an all-time great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there was a chance he could have won that fight because of his physical tools, and I think we've realized more recently than ever that he was also a really smart fighter. I'm not sure he had the ring acumen of Mayweather. I'm not sure anybody did. Maybe guys like Hopkins and a few other guys. But at any rate, all that said, and a ton of respect for Pacquiao. But even the best Pacquiao was human. Eric Morales beat him. Juan Manuel Marquez sort of had his number.
Sure.
You could argue that he won the majority of those 4 fights, or at least half of those 4 fights, something like that. And Mayweather is better than both those guys. Defensive genius, meaning even if Pacquiao even Pacquiao at his best would have trouble hitting him cleanly. Even the Pacquiao he just was raving about, he still would have problems hitting Mayweather cleanly. Anybody would. I think Mayweather just would have waited and let Pacquiao run into counter punches the entire fight, and I think he still would have won a clear decision.
Yeah, it's interesting you point out Pacquiao's ring IQ, because I believe that the knockout loss to Marquez made him a craftier fighter. He sort of learned from that. He wasn't as reckless. I saw it when he fought Brandon Rios. After that, I saw it when he fought Timothy Bradley. And I think it kind of hurt him against Floyd Mayweather when they finally fought. Now, as far as 5 years ago, what would have happened? I think Pacquiao would have been more bold, and I could see him running into something, quite frankly, because Mayweather was every bit as good defensively back then as he is now, or as he was in 2015. So he still would have been very hard to hit, but he was much faster. He used his legs a lot more. He threw more. So I think the result is a clear Mayweather win, no matter the year, as you said. But I could even see a stoppage for him. I mean, again, Mayweather was older than Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, you can say, well, Manny was in more wars, but Floyd had been fighting almost as soon as he learned how to make a fist. So he had plenty of gym wars, plenty of wear and tear on his body. And like I said, you look back at the guy who fought Cotto, Mike, to me it was a huge difference. So you get that version of Floyd, who was every bit as tough to hit defensively, sturdy, strong, threw more punches with conviction. And you get a Manny Pacquiao who was a little more brazen than the version post Juan Manuel Marquez. And maybe he runs into a right hand. Who knows?
Yeah, anything's possible, obviously. Mayweather was capable of knocking people out. He just wasn't as interested in that later on. I think he just wanted to get in and win and get out. Sure. But I just think that, and I agree with you. Excuse me, I agree with you. I think Mayweather wins no matter when they fight, maybe even right now. But I just think that Pacquiao at his best was such a dynamo that you couldn't count him out. Physically, he was just really a marvel. Almost, I think you might even be able to argue that more of a physical marvel than Mayweather.
I don't think so.
I hadn't really thought about that till this very second, but it's possible. I mean, I'm not sure that Mayweather had hands.
He's just more powerful.
I mean, he could punch harder. Yeah. Well, maybe Pacquiao didn't punch as hard as he moved up in weight. Obviously, he the whole last decade of his career, he wasn't knocking anybody out. But in terms of just the quickness, his moving,
foot speed, maybe
his speed, but also his hand speed was incredible. It's still amazing, actually, at 41 or whatever he is. And anyway, bottom line for me is that he was such a dynamo that he might have had a chance. I don't think he had next to no chance in 2015.
What's interesting is I'm thinking about it as you're talking, and you mentioned the physical attributes. Floyd Mayweather was a marvel. He was he faster than Manny Pacquiao? He looked like it when they fought finally in 2015. Obviously, neither were as fast as they were in 2010. But one thing that Roy Jones pointed out during that fight was, I think one of the announcers said, "Man, it looks like Mayweather's faster than him." And Roy Jones said, he is faster than him. He gets the point from point A to point B quicker than Pacquiao. And I think that Pacquiao threw rapid fire combinations, but Mayweather could always counter faster with that one shot. He was sturdy. He was light on his feet. Mayweather was a pretty physical marvel as well, and I think it's somewhat overlooked maybe because his performances weren't as dynamic, and he was he didn't waste a lot of movement. His feet didn't look that fast because he didn't take any unnecessary steps, but he was pretty fleet-footed when he had to be. But look, I mean, we could go on and on about this fight, just like many of you can. And we'd like to get your thoughts, actually. If you could leave a comment on our PBC social media platforms once this is posted, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get some closure on this epic event. But I have a feeling that at some point later this year, Mighty Mike and I are going to revisit this fight and discuss it some more. All right, it is time for our next interview. He is the undefeated IBF super middleweight champion, a rising star in boxing, Caleb Sweethands Plant. Caleb, first thing I want to ask you is, how are you and your loved ones doing at this time?
As of now, everybody is good. Everyone's safe. Everyone's healthy. And, I know there's a lot going on in the world and everybody's suffering from it in some type of way, whether it's big or small. But, my family and all my friends that I know of are safe and healthy. So that's good.
That's good to hear. I see you've been doing a lot of working out during the lockdown. Actually, to be honest with you, I think I see you doing a lot of working out, period. Which made me want to ask you, what's the longest you've ever gone without hitting the gym? Are you ever out of shape?
I mean, I may sit out for a couple weeks. I sit out for a couple weeks and rest. You got to let the body rest. And as I've gone through my career, I've learned to, let the body rest a little bit more. But, I mean, I'm working out almost all the time. You got to let your body rest from camp. You can't be going 100 miles an hour all the time.
Right.
You can burn out. You can burn, not even mentally, but just your body, it won't be able to keep up. But yeah, I stay on it pretty often.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I see that you do take some time to yourself. I saw on your IG that you got an Impala 64, I think it was, that I saw. I mean, when I was a kid, I dreamed of having one, but that was because, like, I saw Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg always had one. So I was wondering, how did you develop a love for those cars?
Well, me and my dad have always been fans of classic cars, muscle cars, and since I was a kid, that's been one of my dream cars, really. And a 72 Chevelle, that's another dream car.
Wow.
I got a couple of them, but I figured out, being out on the West Coast, being in Vegas, and the weather's always nice. It'd be nice to have a 64 rag top where you can put the top down and enjoy the nice weather. So
yeah, it's a clean car, man. The pictures look good.
Thank you.
Cool. Caleb, last time we saw you in the ring, you got a lot of love from your hometown fans in Nashville. How much did that mean to you to see that kind of support?
Oh, it meant the world. Since I was a little kid, that was a dream of mine to fight at the Bridgestone Arena one day, either for a world title or, defending it. And for the whole city to come out like they did, and not just the amount of people that come out, but the energy that was in the arena, it was electric. So that was one of my best boxing moments ever, for sure.
You also drew a whopping 1.86 million viewers on TV. What was your reaction when you heard that?
It felt good. When I first won the world title against Jose, I had more views on FS1 than ever before, with 986,000. I think before that was like 300,000 or 400,000 something. And then against Mike Lee, it was 1.4, and then against Vincent, it was 1.8. So I basically doubled my numbers in a year. I feel like I'm on a great track, a great path right now. And I'm young. I'm only 27, only 20-0. So I feel like I'm in a great spot. I feel like people are really tuning in to see what I'm doing.
You showed a lot of different facets against Vincent Feigenbutz. Do you feel you're in your prime now, or do you see yourself on an upward curve that you're still improving?
No, I'm still on the upward curve. Like I said, I'm only 20-0, and I feel like every time you see me step out, I think you see a new and improved me. And I think against Vincent, that was the best Caleb Plant you guys have seen yet. And but I think next time I step out, it'll be even better performance. You know, because like you said, you got to take a break from training camp and going 100 miles an hour. But, you know, I stay in shape. I live a healthy lifestyle. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't party. You know, I stay dedicated to my craft. So I think that's why you guys are seeing, you know, me level up each time.
You know, Mike was just referenced the different facets, and watching you against Feigenbutz got me thinking, or made me want to ask you, who were some of the fighters that you admired or emulated when you were growing up?
I never wanted to be just like another fighter. That's one thing I always felt like, you know, I always wanted to be myself. I felt like me trying to be like anyone else, you know, I could be limiting myself. I could be something more. But, you know, all these great champions have definitely, you know, helped pave the way. And I've stolen a lot of things from a lot of great fighters and a lot of guys who don't even have the same style as me, like Roberto Duran. I've taken things also from, you know, James Toney, Mildred Taylor, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward. Those
Good choices.
Terry Norris.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the, you know, some skillful fighters that I really like to watch.
You mentioned earlier the fight against Jose Uzcategui. That was at the start of 2019, and you were an underdog when you fought him, and now a lot of folks are pegging you as boxing's next star. How does that change? How does that make you feel?
I mean, it feels good. It feels good. I'm appreciative of all the support and all the fans are tuning in and tuning on social media and keeping up with me. But, you know, I try not to get too caught up in you know, being a star, being famous, or, you know, that's not why I started this. And that's never what has, you know, driven me to be all that. I love boxing. I love the sport. I love working on my craft. And I'm a competitor. I love to win. And I love to compete. So it feels good, but I'm trying to stay focused on the task at hand, you know, so.
Have you noticed a change in the way people treat you, though, since then, or the way people come at you?
I mean, yeah, a little bit. You know, I feel like before that fight, I really hadn't had I hadn't been able to properly introduce myself to the world. You know, the boxers, they know me from the amateurs, so a lot of them, but, you know, just the world in general, the boxing community. You know, I hadn't really got to properly introduce myself and step up against, you know, a top super middleweight. You know, he was a world champion. He had a lot of momentum, with coming off some big wins. And for me to step up, you know, after a year layoff and everything that, you know, after I broke my hand and all that stuff, I think I really showed, you know, I'm the full package. I can fight off the front foot. I can fight off the back foot. I got a good jab. I got good legs. I got, you know, good upper body movement, good defense, a good punch selection. I got good combinations. I'm fast. And, you know, I think that was the first glimpse I got to really show all of that stuff. So.
Gotcha. But, you know, you said a little bit, and I'm wondering, obviously, there is extra attention now. You mentioned your viewership has gone up. With that extra attention, is there any added pressure? Is there any change as far as your approach?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to add pressure, but some people enjoy that and some people shy away from it. And I feel like, you know, I've always been one, you know, the spotlight doesn't scare me in boxing. You know, outside of boxing, I'm pretty quiet and reserved, and that's really who I am. But in boxing, you know, that's really my comfort zone. Sometimes I'm maybe a little more outspoken but that's also who I really am. That's the competitive nature in me. And, you know, I love fighting in front of a big crowd. I love fighting with a bunch of people watching. I love when all the, you know, everything's on the line. I feel like that's when I perform best. So, you know, it's going to come with the territory as I continue to move up, but I also think that's going to play into my hands. So.
We had David Benavides on our podcast a while back, and he said he doesn't like you in part because of comments you've made. I guess one example would be keeping his nose clean. Where did the friction between you guys start, or is it there, and you know, to what degree?
I mean, you know, first I think we just agree to disagree on, you know, who's better, and that's fine. But, you know, they've made some comments about my daughter and how I shouldn't talk about her anymore and how I'm just using her to get famous, you know. that she doesn't need to be spoken about it and stuff like that. And I don't think it's any man's place to tell me or any man for that matter how to, keep his daughter's spirit alive. I don't cram it down people's throat, but also, I'm not going to forget about her. Her energy doesn't die. It's transferred. And she may not be here, but her spirit still is, and it lives through me. And she's a huge motivating factor for me. So for, when men go to war, usually they leave the women and children at home. So for him to be speaking on my daughter, that's past boxing. That's not right, especially when, his two sons haven't always kept their nose clean. So, don't just careful how you talk about, speak on the dead, people who not even here no more, when, nobody's hands are clean. So.
That's a good response. He also said that he truly believes that you're scared of him. What would you say to that?
I've been through things that kid hadn't even had nightmares about. So, and am I lying? No, I'm not. So I've been through things that kid hadn't had nightmares about. So for him to think I'm scared, or come on guys, we're professional fighters. You know what I'm saying? What about the video of his promoter on my Instagram that I posted of Samson saying that they don't want to fight till 2021, 2022? Those aren't my words. That's not me saying that I want to wait. That's his team saying they want to wait. That's his boss saying that they want to wait.
What did you make of that?
How am I scared? I mean, I don't know what to make of it. That's for them. That's for them to tell you all. Those are their words. I can't explain. I can't explain that. That's for them to explain. I'm saying I want to fight. He thinks I'm scared of him. I'm saying I want to fight. I have a video saying of his promoter Samson saying that they want to wait. They don't want to fight right now. They think that that the fight should be held off. It's on my Instagram. It's on my social media. Those are my words. The only reason I posted is because it's like I'm just clearing the air, really. Letting people know that it's nothing from our side. There's no hold up on our end.
So it's a fight you want.
Yeah, that's the fight that I want. I don't know how else to say it. Everybody keeps asking me that. And I know that that's a big question in boxing, so it's nobody's fault, but I really don't know how else to say it. And, I just think it's absurd to say I'm scared of him. That's crazy.
In terms of styles, Benavidez is a guy who basically comes directly at his opponents. Does that style suit yours, do you think?
I mean, whenever there's a contrasting style in the ring, at that point, it's really a test of will. Who can impose their will on the other one? Who's gonna impose their game plan on the other? I'll fight like this, you fight like that. Whose will is stronger than whose? So, I mean, eventually that fight will happen, hopefully, and we can just, instead of talking about it or me trying to convince you who's better or him trying to convince y'all, we can just see for ourselves. We don't even have to talk about it. We can just figure it out.
Now, someone else who recently there was some back and forth between was Danny Jacobs. Is he someone that's on your radar, and what did you make of those comments that he made?
I mean, if there's no unification fight to be made and there's no fights on, there's no other fights to be made, absolutely. He's not like at the top of the food chain in any weight class, much less super middleweight. So, I mean, he's really not like at the top of what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to do. So, but that's a fight that can definitely be made. That's a fight that, I'm not scared of. I'm not running from. I'm trying to chase bigger things. I want unification matches,
Gotcha. Now, one person who's got a belt, obviously, is Canelo Alvarez. There was some back and forth regarding that. Is that a fight you're still targeting?
Yeah, that's a fight that I would love to have. That's a fight that if you go back and check, videos throughout my career, that's a fight that I said that I wanted. But after fighting February 15th, I'm not fighting I wasn't fighting anybody May 2nd. So, and it doesn't really even matter now because, you know, nobody's fighting May 2nd. And even before that, they weren't going to fight me anyways. They were going to fight Billy Joe Saunders. You know, they didn't even make an offer to me and my team. It was a secondary person who reached out, and you know, and we said no, we're not doing that. To a secondary person, they never offered any money. I didn't price myself out. They just, some secondary guy mentioned something to somebody on our team, and I mean, it was like 9 weeks later after I had just fought. So that's not gonna happen. That's not realistic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd said that you needed more time between fights, something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were confused thinking I'm saying I need rest from the fight when, you know, I didn't take a lot of punishment. But if you know boxing, then you know that you don't need it. It's not about resting from the fight. It's about resting from training camp.
Right.
8 weeks of running, you know, 5-6 miles, sprints, you know, being abstinent, making weight. You know, there's so many things that you have to exclude out of your life that after 8 weeks you want back in your life. So I'm no up and comer or prospect or contender. You know, I've solidified myself as one of the very, very top in my weight class. So, you know, I don't have to just jump on any offer that's thrown, any unreasonable offer that's thrown to me.
Got it. So have you heard anything about when you might return? Or are you just like everybody else in a holding pattern, sort of hoping it happens as soon as possible?
Just in a holding pattern, hoping that it happens as soon as possible, and just trying to stay, you know, disciplined and on top of everything that I can in the meantime. So.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely stay tuned. Caleb, once again, thanks so much for being with us. Stay safe, you and your family.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you guys. Y'all stay safe as well.
And Caleb, one other thing too. Mike says you need to have one more fight in Tennessee because we had a really awesome time in Nashville. The food was great. The atmosphere was incredible. Yeah. Jordan singing the national anthem. So please, one more fight in Nashville.
I got to get to Nashville. Never been.
I'm going to put the word in.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks you so much.
All right, guys.
Take care. All right, well, that concludes today's episode. Just want to remind you guys, make sure to subscribe to the PBC Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find ours. Of course, the Premier Boxing Champions website. And also, don't forget to check out Time Out with Ray Flores on the PBC IG page. It will be on YouTube I believe YouTube if you didn't catch it on IG Live. This week's guest is super welterweight contender Erickson the Hammer Lubin, and that's right, it will be on YouTube. Now, Wednesdays and Fridays, we have our at-home series on the PBC Facebook page. This Wednesday's guest is the one and only Erislandy Lara, the American Dream. And on Friday, it's another 154-pound champion, Brian Carlos Castano. Now, Thursday on the PBC Facebook page, we've got former unified super welterweight champion Swift Jared Hurd appearing on our Going the Distance series. Hurd is going to be walking us through his epic battle with the aforementioned Lara. And on Saturday night, PBC goes live on YouTube with honestly one of the best cards of 2020, if not the best. It's a thrilling rematch between Jermell Charlo and Tony Harrison, which featured just a bananas undercard for those who remember. You definitely don't want to miss that. And finally, we want to thank you all for tuning in, of course, and be sure to check us out next week for more boxing talk right here on the PBC Podcast.